Hey there, Merry Christmas everyone, and welcome to Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show, a show dedicated to progressive rock and other forms of rock music. So we're back here on Christmas Day, December the 25th, 2022, for day number 25 of progressive rock albums from the 1980s. So for those of you who don't know what we do here, this is pretty much a one and done thing. So 31 albums, 31 days, 31 groups. So each group would get one album. Basically, it's all albums that I haven't listened to before. I've never heard any of these albums before. In today's case, there was one track on here that I had heard the riff before, but I hadn't actually listened to the entire song. And I was going to disqualify it, but I decided that I would listen to the rest of the album first, and then if it was anything else, I would take it out. But I didn't hear anything else, so I decided to keep the album. So for those of you who still aren't quite 100% sure what's going on, so there's basically, I'm going to listen to an album for the first time from a group. Some of the groups will be groups I've known for my entire music career. I have a lot of their stuff, and I just never heard this album. They may be groups I have some of their stuff, but not all of their stuff, and I haven't heard this album. There may be groups I've heard of, but not listened to anything from them. And then there may be groups that I know nothing about and never heard of and never heard the music either. And so for today, it's a group that I've had quite a bit of dealing with over the years. It became very popular with me around the turn of the century as I just rediscovered them. And since that time, I've added album after album, and I like them all. This is just one more that I hadn't heard. There may be one or two more that I actually haven't heard as well, but I won't know until I actually get them. So, but for this particular one, it's a well-known group, and we're talking about Pink Floyd, and the album is A Momentary Lapse of Reasoning. Yeah, I thought there would have been a track or two on here I had heard before, but other than that one riff on the second song, Learning to Fly, I didn't actually hear any of this stuff before. And I thought I would know the Learning to Fly song, but I only knew the riff, and I didn't hear anything else on the album that jarred any memory of me listening to them before, or this particular album anyways. So, what is it about this album that we need to know? Okay, so it's Pink Floyd, and it really sounds Pink Floyd-ish. It's a very Pink Floyd-ish sounding album. Lots of that slow kind of melodic guitar that David Gilmour is famous for. Lots of keyboards and synthesizers. The keyboard and synthesizers aren't as predominant as some of the other Pink Floyd, but still very tastefully done. Drums are strong and rhythmic here as well. Lots of noises and sounds, which is common on Floyd albums. The vocals are good, very Pink Floyd-ish sounding vocals. So it's a very standard kind of Floyd sound, very melodic, there's no real kind of serious outtake guitars or anything like that. Maybe in the last couple of tracks, but overall it's a pretty melodic album. Just the way I like my Floyd. It's the same with Eloy. I like them both for the same reason. They both have that melodic sound that they keep repeating, and I like that in their music a lot. So, anyways, I like the album a lot. So we'll go just to say I gave one track I didn't really care for. It was The New Machine. I gave it a 4, and the other two I had 2 5s and a 4. And then the rest are 1 6, and then most of the rest of the album is like 5 7s and an 8. So a pretty strong album, I think. Liked it quite a bit. I knew I would like it. It's Pink Floyd. It was just a matter of whether I'd heard it before or not. That was the big thing. So anyway, so we'll start off with the number 1 track, Signs of Life. Okay. There's kind of a water sound. It's almost like they're on a boat here. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like they're on a boat moving around and there's water hitting up against the side of the boat or lapping away, you know. That's what it sounds like. And there's some organ here at the beginning as well. So you get this kind of synthesizer and organ sound coming in towards the end of the water part. The voices are almost computer, and all these kind of computer jittery noises that you sometimes get when you're listening to these guys. This is entirely an instrumental, this particular track as well. What else can I say about it? Some slow, your typical slow, methodical guitar. Really nice, typical Floyd sound to it. And it's like I wrote on the last part I wrote on the song was very Floydish in its sound. Yeah, so it's a very typical Floyd. So right away I knew I was going to like the album if it continued along this vein, and it pretty much did. The next track out, immediately I got, because I'd heard that riff. But then I said, okay, you know what, I'll listen to the song. And basically the riff was the only part that I remembered. And I must have heard it somewhere, but I don't know where. And so really great riff too. Like it's one of those most memorable riffs. That's why I remembered it right away. Nice solo in there as well. Vocals are solid here. The voice sounds are kind of different, and then you got this kind of synthesizer noise as well, which is quite nice. So I gave this song a 7. So I think, okay, it's getting better. Dogs of War was the next one. Very dark and a very heavy kind of opening. Very foreboding voice. Like it's really a dark feel to the whole song. And it's called Dogs of War, so I'm not really all that surprised by it. There's kind of a female vocal noises here too towards the middle end part of the song, and then it gets a really heavy guitar, drum and keyboard sound to it. Really, really heavy, like almost like the battle is in full engagement, and then that's it. There's some very nice saxophone in here too, really heavy saxophone. So I like this song a lot too. I gave it a 7. The next track, One Slip, is my favorite on the album. Keyboard opening with very kind of poppy sound to it. I like the backing vocals on this track as well. Keyboard opening, like I said, heavy guitars, keys and drums in here throughout most of the track, and the vocals are very, very kind of large, I guess is I don't know if that's a good word to use. They're kind of dominant, I guess is a more prominent word, but they're also very excellent. I think to me it's just it's a real catchy song. I like it a lot. So I gave it an 8. Probably my favorite track on the album. Then the next track is called On the Turning Away. Vocals opening, keyboard, and it's kind of a folky vocal opening. Keyboards are kind of folky sounding too, right? Then you get some heavy guitar riffing here. I'm just reading my notes here to make sure I get it right. Yeah, so you get this kind of part where the vocals are strong and they get larger again, and then you have this keyboard atmosphere in the background that kind of adds to that particular part of the song. Yeah, a pretty solid track, I think. The next track actually flows right into the track after it. So the track's called Yet Another Movie, and it goes into the next track, which is Round and Round, which is an instrumental. So I guess they're kind of connected. They probably flow right in. You don't even get a break, and then the instrumental just continues on for the track. So it's got a keyboard synthesizer opening, which is fairly normal for them. Almost bluesy sounding kind of vocals, though. He does this, I don't know how you describe this. They definitely David Gilmour vocals, but he does it in a kind of bluesy way, but it's not the standard kind of bluesy, if that makes any sense. It's a very kind of Pink Floyd-ish bluesy. I don't know if that makes any sense. It makes sense to me, but it might not make any sense to you. I've discovered that many things that make sense to me don't always make sense to other people. So there's a bit of a slow guitar bit and some keyboard fillers. Just overall a very melodic song. Typical Floyd. The next track out is called A New Machine, Part 1. It's basically just a kind of vocal echoes with some voice and synthesizers. And it goes on for, it's maybe a minute or a minute and a half, and then it's done. So it really wasn't notable in any kind of way. So I gave it a 4 anyways. The Terminal First. It's an instrumental. Some really heavy guitar on this track, and synthesizer backgrounds, of course. Heavy riffing with the drums in the back, and then some heavy saxophone at the end. It was okay. I don't think it was as good as the other song with the saxophone, which is Dogs of War, but it's not a bad track. I gave it a 5. I passed it. The next one is The New Machine Part 2. Same kind of thing as New Machine Part 1, but a little bit heavier, and some yelling, and then some synthesizer as well at the background. So it's pretty much the same as The New Machine Part 1, but the voices are a little higher here, a little heavier. And I gave it a 5, so it's a little bit better. And then the last track, which is Sorrow. And I thought for sure I knew this song. I thought I was going to know this because I believe I have it on one of my live albums. Like I believe it's on my Neckworth. I can't remember the name of the album. Nebworth, that's it. On the Nebworth album. I think it's the last track on there. But that was the one track. The problem with the live Floyd is that it's quite long and lengthy. So by the time you get to the last couple of tracks, you're kind of not really paying attention. It's not an album I sat down and listened to like right from front to back, but I have it as a background. It was in my playlist for a while. So I think this song was on there. I couldn't find the album. I think I put it somewhere. I think it's on there. So if it was, I apologize because it was the one track on here I wasn't sure about, but I just didn't recognize it. Maybe it sounds different live than it does on the studio album. It's possible. But I didn't remember it. But anyways, the synthesizer opening was heavy. Heavy guitar, keyboard, and drum, and a classical Floyd sound. Great solo towards the end. So I may have heard this, but it didn't strike a chord. So I don't know if it was because it might have been mixed in with something else on the live album, and so I didn't really catch it. Or it might have been they might have done something different with it on the live album. I'm not sure. I'd have to listen to both to be able to tell you. Anyways, it was the only song on here that I was kind of nervous about because I thought, okay, I'm gonna know this. Pretty sure I've heard this somewhere, but I didn't recognize. I recognized the title, but I didn't really recognize the song. Anyways, it's done now. I decided to not replace this album because of a couple of tracks. Learning to Fly, I had that riff that I remembered, but I didn't recognize anything from Solo, so I decided to just let her go. So a pretty solid album, I think. Even by Pink Floyd standards, I think it's not too bad. There's no Roger Waters on this, of course, because he's gone by this time, and I believe Richard Wright is back in the band at this point, because I know that Waters kicked him out, but I think after Waters left, they brought him back in. And I think that's what I remember. I remember something about that. Maybe somebody will tell me exactly what happened, but I remember, because I think Waters left in 85, which this album is in 87, so this probably was the next album out after he left. And I remember there being a somewhat legal battle between the members of Floyd and him for the rights to the name. And I think that this was the time period when Richard Wright came back in the band, because he was kicked out during the recording of the Wall. Like, he was kicked out of the band by Roger Waters, and then came back after he was out of there. And I don't know if he came back right after he was out of there, and he was out of there in '85, so I don't know if he came back right after that, or he didn't come back until this album. I'm not sure. So I know there was one or the other, so I'm not quite 100% sure about that. Anyways, great album. Well worth listening to if you haven't had a chance to listen. I know some people kind of faded from the Floyd after the Wall, and just didn't bother with them once Waters was out of the band. This is worth listening to. It's very Floydish. I don't think it's as sophisticated or complex as some of the stuff that they did when the four of them were in the band, but still well worth listening to. So there you have it. This is the Christmas Day album. So Pink Floyd got that. And then we have, after today, we will have, well, after this comes out tomorrow morning, we have only the 6 days, and there's one extra episode that will come once all 31 albums are in, and that will be the ranking of the 31 albums for that series, and I will just rank them as according to how I feel about them at the end, and I'll go from the 31st right to the first, as I always do with them, least to best, or worst to first, or whatever you want to call it. They're just basically one-off listening, so do my best to try and put them in an order that feels right with me, and I hope you'll enjoy that part, because I think it's worth doing that, because it kind of, I think it was DB that asked me to give my 10 favorite progressive rock albums of the 1980s, and at the time I wasn't even sure I knew that many, so I decided to do this series, which he was happy with, but I also want to give him the ranking that he wanted, so we're going to do that at the end, so he gets the series that he wanted and the ranking that he wanted. I try to accommodate people with what they want within reason. I mean, there's some things people want me to do that I have no interest in doing them, because I've never listened to those type of bands. But anyway, we're here to please and here to enjoy. So I hope you like this video. It will come out in the morning, and you have yourself a good night. And please like and subscribe. It's much appreciated. And we'll be back on day 26 with another progressive rock album from the 1980s. Have a good night. Bye.